Okadi here. Today we're going to be going over Flicker Strike for the Phrecia event. Now this is obviously one of the most popular build guides that I make. We run a very tanky Flicker Strike, which is a distinct difference from the majority of Flicker Strikes out there in the world. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what it would be to put this build together. So first off, we have like an LE hit leveling guide, which is just to get you through the campaign. You can't Flicker Strike until level 40. It requires a Warrior's Legacy anyway, and a 20 quality Flicker Strike. You need something to get you through the first campaign on the league start. Elemental Hit is a no-brainer. The tree is very, very simple. You're gonna path down here, rush straight for Elemental Equilibrium, Gladiator's Perseverance plus Fire Mastery, Accuracy Mastery plus Precise Technique, etc., etc. We have like a little guide here on the order at which you take Keystones and Masteries. Nothing complicated. For the skills on Elemental Hit, we're just running LE Hit with Elemental Damage, Trinity, and Fortify, Purity, Blood, and Sand, Flame Dash for Mobility, Blood Rage for Frenzy Charges attack speed, Precision as needed for Precise Technique, Whirling Blades for Mobility, Poacher's Mark on Hit for Damage and Survivability, and then your Elemental Relics come from your Paladin Ascendancy. And then in the campaign, you're going to have 2 or 3 Ascendancies. We go Elemental Valiance for the first 2 Ascendancies, and if you get your 3rd one in the campaign, take Bring the Battle. Very, very simple, straightforward leveling guide. Nothing complicated here. Now, once you flip over to Flicker Strike, we have this set up in early budget, mid budget, high budget, Mage Blood version for people who are obsessed with using Mage Blood, and then maximum DPS. I recommend the high budget for your goals. The Mage Blood is worse than the high budget. It's only there for people who are obsessed with Mage Blood. And the maximum DPS is only there for people that don't care about defenses. The high budget is the most well-rounded version of the build. But we start off with the early budget, and the items are pretty straightforward. A Rebuke of the Vaal is just a huge carry sword. You can use a High Aeon's Fury if for some reason Rebuke of the Vaal is expensive. Then we want a shield with defenses and block. Then we want a helmet with, again, defenses and life and resistances. We want body armor with defensive, life, and resistances. We want gloves with attack speed, life, and resistances. Dark Rate Vectors are a cheap entry into getting an extra Frenzy Charge. You can even get these Foulborn with accuracy per Frenzy Charge instead of evasion per Frenzy Charge. Carnage Heart is always a 1 chaos amazing starting amulet. Warrior's Legacy is a requirement for the build. And then finally, if you can get your hands on a Taming, it's a huge scaler for your damage. We run a Stygian Vice for our belt alongside a Murderous Eyejewel with flat elemental damage on it. And then just some Crimson Jewels with life and attack speed on them. Nothing complex in the early budget. If you're in the early budget, you'll be sitting around 6 million DPS decked out like this. For our skills in the early budget, we're running Flicker Strike with Multi-Strike, Trinity, Fortify, Ice Bite, and Close Combat. If you're on a 5 link, you drop Close Combat. If you can get an Imbue support on Flicker Strike, get whatever you can. Determination, Skitterbots for auras, Poacher's Mark on Hit with Blood Rage, because we are still a Precise Technique build in the early budget of the build. Leap Slam with faster attacks for mobility. Vaal Smite with more duration, efficacy, and Hydrosphere. This just gives us a huge buff from Vaal Smite, and Hydrosphere for single target DPS AoE splash. And then finally, of course, Summon Relics from our Paladin Ascendancy node, Elemental Valiance. Just to recap on Elemental Valiance, this gives us Anger, Hatred, and Wrath aura at level 30 versions. It's unbelievably strong, and the main reason why we are Paladin and not Ancestral Commander on our recommended class and ascendancy for Flicker Strike. Now for our passive tree, this is a standard Flicker Strike passive tree. We path over to Tribal Fury because the Anoint is too expensive early on in the league. We are Precise Technique, so we have accuracy here and accuracy here. If you really need it, you can get more accuracy up here. But we're going to go over the things that are a requirement for the build. It is absolutely required that you have Sword Mastery, 8% chance to gain a Frenzy Charge when you hit a unique enemy. It's absolutely required that you have 10% chance to gain a Frenzy Charge when you hit a marked enemy. And it is absolutely required that you do have Multi-Strike and Quality on your Flicker Strike in the early version of the build. If you do not have all of that, your Frenzy Charge generation will feel like poo-poo. Now, outside of that, we do scale into a little bit of Spell Suppression with Lucky Suppress. This is not ideal from an in-game perspective, but early on, it's great for getting the build running on a budget because you don't have the currencies to get a ton of suppression. But later on, we'll switch over to full suppression and drop the chance to suppress is lucky. And then we anoint Disciple of Unyielding. It's a great mid-cost anoint that is huge for the build. We do take Block Mastery as well as Deflection for maintaining our endurance charges in clear. And then we do take Testudo for additional block, because block is our primary defense in the build. We get tons of armor and tons of evasion if you have good gear. And if you wanted to, you can flip into Cloth and Chain for additional armor and evasion here if you feel like your gear is a little lacking. And then finally, it is very important that you get non-ball strikes. Strike one additional enemy on attack mastery to make Flicker Strike feel good on clear. This combined with Tribal Mastery, or Tribal Fury, is how we have such good clear on Flicker Strike. This, of course, is our early budget of the build. The mid-budget version of the build, which we're not going to give a price tag to, basically usually less than 100 divs to fully kit out the mid-budget version of the build. If you're a crafter and you're smart and you're early in the economy, it could be 20. If you're late in the economy, it could be 100. Now, for the mid-budget version of the build, we do flip over to crit, so you are going to need to craft a crit foil. Now, the primary way for crafting these foils is on my YouTube videos, but it is a fractured base, essence spam for double Ellie on the front, prefixes can't be changed, harvest reforged speed, bench craft on, strengthen it plus crit. Next up, we want a shield. We want to look for a synth shield with 5%, well, any percent life on block, blessed orb reroll it to 5%, and then slam loathings into it until you get a decent shield. On our helmet here, we're going to look for a shield with spell suppression on it, and so you can either start off with a spell suppression fracture, and then chaos slam or res slam it until you get a good suffix, or until you get T1 life on there. There's a lot of ways to craft this one as well, but these are fairly easy to get a hold of. We want a bronze lithe for massively scaling our damage. We want gloves with spell suppression, attack speed, resistances, life, things like that. We want boots with movement speed, spell suppression, life, resistances. Yoke of Suffering is huge for the build, and we do want a 10% yoke. That's a little aggressive to have a 12% in there. We want a 10% Yoke of Suffering. They can be corrupted up to 12%, but that's not a mid-budget amulet. So 10% yoke, very important. Also very important, good res, especially lightning res. We're a little short on lightning res in the build. So you want a very strong lightning res roll on your Yoke of Suffering, and then ideally catalyze for resistances. A Warrior's Legacy, just get like a good one. They're always cheap. They'll be like expensive the first 8 hours of the game, and then they immediately plummet when people stop trying to gouge everyone on the market. Taming, you just want the best rolls you can get on the Taming, and then a Stygian Vice, you want good resistances, and then ideally either elemental damage with attack skills or an open crafting prefix so we can craft elemental damage with attack skills off of the bench. Murderous Sigil, it is very important that you get one with accuracy. You are going to need the accuracy in the build. Outside of that, the most elemental damage that you can get on the Jewel. And Ancestral Vision to cap our ailment avoidance and interrogation for Secrets of Suffering. A large cluster Jewel with either Calamitous Feed the Fury Martial Prowess, or Fuel the Fight instead of Feed the Fury if you want to save Mana Leech off of the tree, or Devastator instead of Feed the Fury if you want AoE explosions. A Lethal Pride right here, which you can search for by coming in, clicking Find Timeless Jewel, and just clicking Search. All of the nodes are set in here. Just take one from the list. They're all good. The ones at the top are better than the ones at the bottom. And then we just get a Jewel with life and crit on it, and then another Jewel with corrupted blood cannot be inflicted, and some good stats on it. You can use it to fill res, stuff like that. Very, very solid. And so that's how we have our mid-budget setup on the build. For skills, not a lot of choices here. We're running Flicker Strike with Multi-Strike Trinity, Ice Bite, Fortify, and Close Combat. Imbue support ideally is Endurance Charge on melee stun, but you can also use damage on full life, elemental damage with attacks, Ruthless, Hypothermia, Volatility. These are all okay. But Endurance Charge with melee stun is king. Determination, Skitter Bots, Flesh and Stone with Enlighten for our auras. Assassin's Mark with Mark on Hit instead of Poacher's Mark because we're crit based now. Blood Rage for attack speed and frenzy charges. Leap Slam with faster attacks for mobility. Enduring Cry with urgent orders. And Castman damage taken with Immortal Call. I know these are in the same boot. No Enduring Cry does not do Castman damage taken. Stop asking why your Enduring Cry doesn't Castman damage taken. You cannot Enduring Cry Castman damage taken. They're just in the same item. You manually click Enduring Cry before a boss, or as a boss spawns in, to spike your endurance charges so you don't get one shot. That's the purpose of Enduring Cry. You can also use a swap with the shield, Red Blade Banner Shield, which gives you maximum power, so you can Enduring Cry before the boss comes out. That's an option too. And finally, Vol Smite with Vol Haste, Hydrosphere and more duration. Again, this is Vol Haste is used only for the Vol speed effect, Vol Smite only for the Vol damage effect, and then Hydrosphere for single target. Again, summon Elemental Relics from our Ascendancy, and summon Spectral Tiger for our Bloodline Ascendancy, which we're going to utilize on this build. And that is how we have our mid-budget set up on our skills. For our passive tree, it's mostly the same stuff. The only difference is we drop Precise Technique, which means we drop some accuracy we don't need. We instead pick up Crit Wheel here, and we have a few more points spent on the tree in general. But everything else is mostly the same. Your Large Cluster Jewel, which brings in your Interrogation, as well as an additional spot for your Ancestral Vision, helps out. And we anoint Tribal Fury instead of Disciple of Unyielding, instead Path to Disciple of Unyielding. For our high budget build, we do a few things differently. Obviously, a better sword, a better shield, a better helmet. These are all just better versions of the items previously listed. We have a guide on how to craft the boots, how to craft the gloves, how to craft the helmet, how to craft the helm on YouTube, so you can look up those guides as well. We still run a yoke, a warrior's legacy, a better taming, and a cord belt for forces of nature is a great addition to the build, as opposed to the Stygian Vice for the murderous eye jewel. We do in the high budget FF more than skill, which gives us lucky block. We may not FF more than skill on like a high budget version in the build in the new season, because you can rip it off of the tree with a new tattoo. We do have this 20% increased damage taken by enemies node, which we can tattoo into something else useful. I haven't decided what the best one is. Obviously, more than skill is phenomenal, but we can FF more than skill. We can't tattoo off. We can tattoo off Marauder stuff or Inquisitor stuff. There's some flexibility with that. We'll figure out what's going to be the best one. For right now, we're just assuming that you're going to use the FF for more than skill. Outside of that, everything else is the same. We get 2 clusters instead of 1 to make room for the Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh down here. And this is how we have everything set up for our high budget. Mage Blood and maximum DPS we won't go over individually. You can take a look at those. Those are incredibly high investment versions of the build. If you have the currency to build those out and you don't know what to do, come by channel and ask anytime. So start off Elemental Hit leveling guide. Swing into early budget build and early mapping, switch to mid budget build once you have the ability to farm currency, and then switch to high budget build towards the end of our very, very short league. All in all, phenomenal build. So much fun. I have not had a single person who loves Flicker Strike have a bad experience with this build. If you've never played Flicker Strike, you should give it a try. It's a lot of fun. Now, if you have any questions over anything, drop a comment down below or come by Twitch. I'm happy to answer them. Thank y'all very much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Peace.